He's like, we need to be the capital of women's sports. And I thought about it and I said, you know what, you're right, because that puts us truly on the map.
Welcome back to Innovate or Evaporate, where we explore the relentless pace of change and the innovators who drive it. I'm your host, Toph Day, and we have Julie Roe Lach with us today. Executive Vice President with the Pacers Sports and Entertainment. Here in just a couple of weeks, you're taking over that role, and the former Horizon League Commissioner, who has spent 3 decades innovating at the intersection of sports, compliance, and leadership. Julie's career is a masterclass in adapting to a relentless pace of change, from the rise of the NIL to the business of major professional sports. We are going to learn the secrets about how to lead organizations that require the need for buy-in from multiple other CEOs and presidents. Julie, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
We're going to have a blast today.
Let's do it.
I love sports, and most people love sports of some sort, or it could be even bocce ball.
Right.
But I think, so you were an All-American athlete, by the way.
Long ago. Yes.
Tell us about that.
I grew up in a small town, a lot like Hoosiers, only in Southern Illinois. I mean, like literally would get dropped off at the gym on Sundays and just play pickup ball for 4 or 5 hours. So basketball was my first passion, love, and just that was my sport growing up. And then I was fortunate enough to play in college at Millikin University.
That's so awesome. Were you a guard, or what would you play?
You know, it's funny. I'm now 5'10", but I was short until high school. So I had to learn how to handle the ball to play.
Yep.
And then I had a big growth spurt. So I was a power forward in college.
That's awesome. I always like to say in basketball, I've never seen a shot past half court that I don't like.
Well, my bread and butter was like the 18-foot jumper.
Yeah.
And my dad insisted that I learn how to shoot a real jump shot. And one of my teammates, who I'm still buddies with today, we played all 4 years. She literally had the T-shirt that says, "My range starts when I walk in the gym."
That's awesome. I love it.
She would bank threes, she'd switch threes, but she was one of those players that just was always shooting from far out. As soon as she'd take off, I just take off running for the rebound because I knew it was going somewhere. Yeah, awesome. We had a blast.
I love it. By the way, I was in the movie Hoosiers for 3 seconds.
Okay, yes. In what role?
When I was an extra, but when Ollie was making those 2 free throws underhanded.
Oh, yes, I just watched the scene. Yeah, yes.
Right there. There's a drum beat, and there's like 5 people on the screen, and I'm looking like a total dork. And,
that's awesome.
And but yeah, that's my claim to fame. That's
all right, I got. That's big time.
So you went on to you went to law school.
I did,
and I like having the skill set of being an attorney it's so versatile. It has so many different uses in life. And so I'd like to talk about that for a minute as we get started. Like, why did you go to law school? Because you can go practice, as the corporate or IP or whatever it might be, or you can use it in business or in leagues and things of that nature. What did you go to law school for a purpose, or did you end up using it very differently as you got out?
Well, both. So, when I left undergrad and I had an internship at the NCAA, and their headquarters were not in Indianapolis at the time. They were in Kansas City.
Right,
yeah, so I'm an old timer. I went to Kansas City, and I thought, okay, I'm going to do this internship for a year, and then I'll go to law school, because I thought I wanted to be a lawyer. I didn't know you could be a sports lawyer. I didn't know that was a thing. I just thought I would enjoy the practice of law, so that was my intended path. Go to the NCAA national office, realize, oh my gosh, there's this whole universe of sports jobs. The national office says, we're leaving Kansas City, moving to Indianapolis. 2/3 of the people said, we're not moving. So great time to be an intern, because that meant most of us got jobs. I still had this idea of going to law school, and I researched that IU Indianapolis, which is now IU McKinney School of Law, had an evening division. So I talked to my then supervisor and said, I'll take this job if I can go to law school at night when we moved to Indianapolis. And the NCAA was supportive of that. So that was the deal. I moved here. And then after I got my feet settled a little bit, and then I started law school and went to their evening division for 4 years.
That's fascinating. I would assume law also comes into play, like with sports agents.
Yes,
right. It would be a really handy. Not that all of them have law degrees, right, but probably comes in pretty handy.
It does, and so I go to law school, and I'm working in the eligibility department at the NCAA, like deciding eligibility cases. So there's a legal framework involved. But when I finished, I then moved into major infractions, which was more like, I say it's like Law and Order, both the cops and the prosecutors, because you'd have to go out and investigate.
Right.
And then if something was there, you turned into a prosecutor and you had to bring allegations and then present it in like the NCAA court. We would work with and against sports agents because then it was a lot less permissive than it is today in terms of what agents could and couldn't do. So I saw a different side of sports agents than I think what we see in the papers today and like the necessary role that they serve, which is really strong in advocating and representing athletes.
Yeah.
And now college and pro.
So you were with the NCAA for a number of years, 15, 20 years?
15
years. And then you end up running the enforcement portion of the NCAA.
Right.
And so you probably have a really fascinating point of view from being at the NCAA before these things like NIL kicked in and, should players get paid? Should they not get paid? Is the scholarship the replacement for getting paid and getting the education, et cetera, et cetera? I'd be really interested to I find all this fascinating, right? It's all changing so quickly. And so maybe we go back to like enforcement. So how would think about innovate or evaporate, right? You're trying to protect the integrity of the game and all these types of things. And I don't know how many times like maybe gambling kicked in and there were situations of that or other types of things that teams may do. What was that from it's not a quote unquote necessarily legal process, I'm assuming, right? It's more of the NCAA's guidelines that people have to meet. But what was that like when something would come up and allegations would happen and you go out to these schools? Like, how would you approach that? I mean, are you like gathering evidence and hiring investigators? Like, how does that work?
So the NCAA has investigators in-house. I mean, my first job in enforcement was I worked with a team of investigators. Some come from law enforcement. Some are former prosecutors or public defenders. Some are straight from law school. So some are former coaches. And so you have the whole gamut of life experience and professional experience. And we would get information, in the form of a tip, sometimes self-reported because schools have their own compliance offices. That became less and less over time, I think, because of all the pressures.
Yep.
But we would get information. You'd have to assess the credibility of it. And we, of course, had like filters we'd run it through. And if it seemed legit, then you would assign it to an investigator and then you develop a case strategy. Yeah. And sometimes you might go straight to the source, but usually you'd want to go around the periphery a bit and test the information, see if you could get some documents or evidence, phone records, text records, like whatever types of additional information you could get, and then essentially build the case or build the file. And if you thought you had something, then you'd go straight to the principal. So, I mean, in a typical enforcement case, you could interview anywhere from 50 to 100 people. And there were procedures around. I mean, that's the part that people think, oh, this is such a cool, glamorous job. But then when you're sitting in a 4-hour interview on your 10-page outline.
It was like deposition style.
It was a little, it was very much that without the subpoena power element. If you worked for schools, you had to interview with enforcement, and you had to tell the truth. But, the ability to then prove that somebody's lying, that could be another charge. But that was tough. It's a tough, hurdle, obviously, as it should be. So it was not an easy job. But there were, we dealt with a lot of, to your earlier question of issues you dealt with at the time, and I was just talking to some students about this the other day, we were enforcing rules that were important at the time because you're trying to have this proverbial level playing field. But a lot of that is now permissible. To your point, like now we know student athletes are making extraordinary sums of money in some cases based on NIL. Some of the higher profile cases I was involved with, like, Ohio State had a men's basketball case where the head coach and assistant coach were charged with giving, I think it was $7,000 in cash to an international student athlete who was almost 7 foot tall and obviously a difference maker. So we had to talk to international people. We talked to the ex-girlfriends. We were talking to everybody. And then eventually you might give immunity to a student athlete. And then eventually you're talking to the coaches and they're represented by 3-4 attorneys. And that's where things would get a little volatile sometimes. But that is now permissible, right? It's NIL money. But so what you look at some of the cases and the rules at the time that were important have definitely it's changed course today. So I went on a bit of a tangent there, but
no, that's great. So, because I want to come back to NIL in a minute, because I find that fascinating how that's all evolving. When you were the head of enforcement for the NCAA, there's also rule changes, I'm assuming, every year, right? And so, what do they call them? Rules or guidelines or?
Yeah, they call them bylaws.
Bylaws?
Yeah.
So every year as you're looking at all the things that are happening and trying to project how the sports, across the board are going to evolve and change, you have to get buy-in. I'm assuming that, how does that work? Does the NCAA, do they solicit input from coaches and athletic directors and presidents of universities? Or are there some representatives actually on a committee that determines these things? Like, how does that work?
So yeah, every bylaw in the NCAA rulebook, which used to be about, 3 inches thick, is probably now about 1 inch, just because of a lot of deregulation has happened.
Mm-hmm.
Every rule in there has to get passed by a membership body. It used to be, back when I started now decades ago, one school, one vote. And as a entry-level staff member, I remember writing like the position paper for a delegate at the NCAA convention to go to the microphone and like this big ballroom and move proposal 46-A, which related to a recruiting rule. And then somebody would have to second it. They would debate it. And then you'd call for the vote. And that's how literally, it's a little bit like, not like today's Congress, but a little bit more like a convention style. Division 2 and 3 still operate that way. Division 1, now like 15 years ago, changed. They went to a weighted governance structure. So the Power 4 conferences have a lot more weight in their votes. It just changed again, unfortunately. Some of us opposed that, but it just changed again in August of 25 to give them even more of a weighted vote. But to answer your question, every rule in the rule book is approved by the membership, not by the people sitting in the national office.
Gotcha. So does the NCAA represent all colleges and universities, D1, 2, 3? And
yes.
There's some other designations like there's an FCS.
Yeah, so it's divisions 1, 2, and 3, and then within Division 1, you've got a couple different subdivisions. So on the football side, it's football bowl subdivisions. So that's now 10 conferences that have football programs that are bowl eligible.
Yep.
And then you have 22 conferences that do not participate in the football bowl subdivision, and that those are FCS. There's actually, I think it's now 11 of those, and then 11 conferences that are just basketball centric, like the Horizon League. We don't have FCS or FBS.
So then it gets complex fast, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So then are there different sets of bylaws for each of those different groups, or is there one set of bylaws apply to all?
For instance, basketball applies to all. So those common sports, women's soccer, men's soccer, volleyball, same rules govern. Within football, it's a little more nuanced. A few years ago, the Power 4 conferences said, we need to have more autonomy to pass rules that we want to. So now you might hear A4, like autonomy, it was autonomy 5, but with Pac-12, moving, it's now A4. So they haven't really taken advantage of that like we thought they would, unfortunately. But at any rate, for the most part, it's all Division 1 rules.
So the transition to NIL, everybody has a different opinion.
Right.
Good, bad, indifferent, etc. What's kind of the general consensus with the folks that you talk with? This transition to NIL, is it good? Is it bad? And what's the future for it? And I got like 65 sub questions in here. I'm even curious about like, if you have a major program and you have someone that has an NIL package that's multi-millions, and then you have, an offensive lineman that is very much a part of the success of that player, but they get nothing or next to nothing. Do you think is there some kind of a spreading mechanism that you think evolves as well? Or so NIL?
I think to your point, we're way early in the market figuring this out.
Yeah.
So that's like the first part of the answer. I think so. And there's different types of NIL. Like a few years ago, and how we got here, I think at the time we had 37 states that had passed different forms of state laws saying it's okay for student athletes to profit from their name, image, likeness. Laws were different than what the NCAA rules were saying at the time, because NCAA rules still said you can't.
Right.
So understandably, and the right thing to do was, we as an association said we need to deregulate this. It was already in the works, but the state's, frankly, efforts accelerated the NCAA deregulation. So that happened, I think it was like July 21. So then you had this whole idea of collectives hadn't yet popped up. Speaking of innovate or evaporate, right? But you had student athletes who could just go out and do deals on their own. And schools could help provide like an infrastructure for that. So like in the Horizon League, we were the first and only conference to say, we're going to do a league-wide deal with this company called Open Doors at the time. There was a little bit like Match.com, only not creepy. So we had we have 4,000 student athletes, nearly a third opted in, and they created profiles on this Open Doors where I'm Julie, I'm from Southern Illinois, I play basketball, but I also love Starbucks coffee or, whatever it is. And I love to bass fish. So maybe Bass Pro, maybe Starbucks, they could be potential, because that would be an authentic, a brand representative. And actually, over the course of 3 years, our student athletes did over $800,000 worth of deals.
Wow.
Where all we did was provide the infrastructure.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't take any of the money, obviously. They were able to fully profit. We had some women's basketball student athletes doing 5-figure deals with Dunkin' Donuts with like their favorite latte, but they're entrepreneurs. So they were doing the video and all that to promote it. It was awesome. So that to me was like exciting, and the right type of NIL, saying, hey, student athletes, you've got something special that other students don't have, and we want you to be able to profit from that. So go do it. And
that's considered a collective. That's an example.
That's just straight NIL.
Okay.
The collectives then pop up where boosters became entrepreneurs and innovated and said, we're going to use this as a recruiting advantage.
Yep.
So we're going to pay these student athletes to come to our schools and give them an NIL deal to promote this collective, which we only created for the sole purpose of driving NIL money back to the student athletes. So in some cases, they were also linked to nonprofits. But for the most part, the real intent for these collectives was to allow boosters and others to put money into them to then go out and tell a student athlete, if you come here, then this collective is going to pay you this amount of money to promote this collective. You get how that's circular, right?
Right.
It's a loophole that is being exploited across the country.
So this is like the story of there was a phone call that went to like David Portnoy or something for this quarterback from Michigan. And it was like, we're going to pay, I may have the numbers wrong, but we're going to pay $12 million, recruit you to come here, but you have to agree to stay here for 4 years or 3 years or something. But those are those kinds of situations where it gives the alumni or the boosters the opportunity to just go full on recruit.
So that's
the battle of the billionaires.
That is what happened. I don't know if 12 million was ever, but yes, you had some outrageous numbers being thrown around, right? So we went from, I would say, legit NIL to collectives NIL to now this huge house settlement happens. And part of the house settlement was a recognition that, one, schools should be able to do NIL deals directly with student athletes up to the $20.5 million cap. So
that's per person? That cap?
$20.5 million note all in. And that includes a certain amount of scholarship aid, but for the most part, it's NIL money. So that could be Purdue saying, Zach Edey, we want to pay you $2 million to use your name, image, likeness to put on billboards all over the state of Indiana to recruit students to be like you.
Right.
Which he's a great ambassador of Purdue. I would do that.
Yeah.
So that's also legit, where schools are paying student athletes to say, we want to use your brand to lift up our institution. Or the fact you're coming here and we're putting out all of these promotions to sell tickets, that could all, or raise money for our new basketball locker room. All of that, right, is NIL. Then you still have the third parties or the collectives, but those deals now have to go through a clearinghouse and be screened for legitimacy. So it can't, if you do have that outrageous scenario of the quarterback getting $12 million, that quarterback has to be doing something for that collective.
Okay.
Which would be, I think, a whole lot of appearances
Right.
or whatever it is. So
a lot of car
the
dealership
collective,
deals.
yes. So this is now this Collegiate Sports Commission that is this new entity. So it's not the NCAA. It's not enforcement. It's a whole separate entity.
So they're completely separate.
Completely separate, set up by the the Power 4 conferences, right? That to be this clearinghouse, and this was all part of this federal settlement as part of the House case that said we're going to set up some level of screening mechanism to allow these NIL deals, but to have some level of, I would say, reasonableness review happen. So that's still early. I'm not sure. The jury's still out on how effective that's going to be.
So 20.5 cap
per school.
So that's per school.
Right.
All sports.
Correct.
Not just basketball or football or volleyball or whatever.
That's right.
So 20.5. It doesn't matter if the school is 40,000 students or 10,000 students?
Correct. Doesn't matter if their budget is Ohio State's or a small private.
Okay. So 20.5. And then the collectives are separate in addition to.
And outside of the 20.5.
And outside of the 20.5. And then that just has to pass a smell test of legitimacy for doing it.
You're ready to work in college sports.
You're the first person that has ever described it that eloquently to me. I've never had the pieces of the puzzle in my mind straight. Okay. Well, hopefully our listeners find that fascinating because I never understood it.
I hope so. And there's nuances to it, but that's the gist.
Yeah.
And that's why there's a lot of sports lawyers involved now helping.
Right. It's a great good time to have a law degree.
That's right.
So then where do you think this all goes?
I think the schools piece will continue, like that 20.5 will continue to escalate. And let's just talk about that lane for a second, because many of the 365 Division I schools, 250 have opted in, because you had to formally opt in. I think the deadline was July 1 to say, we intend to participate, and they're calling it rev share or revenue sharing. Mm-hmm. Not all schools are generating revenue, so that phrase kind of drives me crazy. I think it's more of we're going to opt in and provide some level of institutional support via NIL to student athletes. So will those 250 of the 360 continue to do it? I think so. All of the Horizon League schools are involved. We had to do it if we want to continue to compete in Division I basketball.
Yeah.
Are we contributing the same amount to student athletes as the Big Ten? Absolutely not. But we know where our peers and aspirant conferences are, and we recognize that, one, it's a retention strategy and it's a recruitment strategy. So that will continue. The part that I think is the biggest unknown are these third-party deals. And will this Collegiate Sports Commission, or CSC, you're going to start to hear that, we got to have another acronym to throw into our alphabet soup.
Why not?
But will the CSC be effective at, frankly, putting some legitimacy around these third-party deals, like you said, the mega deal going to the quarterbacks? That's where I think what they're trying to do is establish a market, which is hard to do, but it's not as if there's prior data to drive this. So establish a market and then hopefully bring some stability to what that looks like.
So is the CSC, is that a nonprofit organization?
I think it is a nonprofit. That's a good question. I don't know how they're structured. It's a new
who's a member
legal entity.
Who are the people?
So it's owned by the Power 4 conferences, and then they hired Brian Seeley from Major League Baseball, who's got a legal compliance background, to be the CEO and to set this up. Comes with a lot of credibility, and the idea is and the formulas and the software and the infrastructure being used, a lot of innovation happening there, was all supported by Deloitte.
Yep.
So that there's some, obviously there's some analysis around it.
Yep. So then what happens with the conferences? Do we continue to see these conferences get bigger? Or do you think we've arrived at, or will now some of these smaller conferences start to band together? Or how do you think
that's a great question. There's 32 Division I conferences, and I saw a graphic once that has all of the conferences on this in white boxes with thin lines of when members left and members entered. And I think that will continue. The question is, though, if you just start at like the top of the food chain with the Power of Four, are they done? There's still a question of, even though the SEC and the Big Ten have really obviously expanded, is there a movement to move to now like 2 super leagues?
Right.
I think that's to be determined. There's an episode in Ted Lasso, I'm sure you've seen it, where they're trying to orchestrate that, and Rebecca stands up and says, no, like, we need a Rebecca right now.
Right,
to say, no, this is bad for our ecosystem, for our universe of college sports, because I don't think 2 super leagues
That would seem to defeat the purpose of collegiate sports.
I think if they do that, then they've really moved out. And I hope that doesn't happen, because I think that there's still a lot more benefit for all to be in one ecosystem, even though we are different, than to separate us.
So 15-year run at NCAA, and then you go become, first you're the deputy commissioner of the Horizon League, is that right?
Yep.
And then you become the commissioner of the Horizon League. What drew you to that? What drew you to the other side?
Well, before that, I even had another stop. So I left the NCAA, and I joined forces with Churchill and Antrim to start a sports law practice, where I still serve as of counsel. So it's funny, because in enforcement, we were the prosecutors. So then I went to represent some athletics directors, but primarily coaches and schools being investigated by the NCAA. So I was viewed as going to the dark side. And immediately,
they call it well-rounded.
Exactly. But I loved it because I love the interaction with the client. You're dealing with people who are sorting through some really hard things professionally or on a campus. We also did a lot of proactive work, still do. As I said, like, our main goal is to keep people out of trouble, or if they are in trouble, help them navigate through it.
Right.
And that to me was really satisfying and fulfilling. And we built now a national sports law practice. So I was doing that, and then was approached by the Horizon League to come on board in a deputy commissioner COO role. And I had no idea what went on in a conference office beyond championships, because you see those. And my eyes were really open pretty fast.
So, I mean, that just has to be a very complicated job, right? So you're running this league. How many schools are in the Horizon League? So
today, 11. You were talking about membership. We secured Northern Illinois University joining July 1 of 2026.
Okay. Congratulations.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
Thank you. So then we'll be 12.
So who are some other schools in the Horizon League?
So, well, one of the famous, since we're here in Indiana, Butler, of course, during their runs to the Final Fours during the 2010-2011. Our current membership is 6-state, soon to be 7-state footprint.
Okay.
We brand ourselves as being in major cities, which is pretty unique for our Division I conference at the mid-major level. But we have IUND, of course.
Yes.
Purdue Fort Wayne here in our great state.
Yep.
And then we've got Wright State in the greater Dayton area, Northern Kentucky, greater Cincinnati area, go up to Milwaukee and Green Bay and the Wisconsin system. And then we go east to Cleveland State, Youngstown. Robert Morris is a private. And then in Detroit area, we have Detroit Mercy, our second private. And then Oakland, of course, that's famous for pulling the upset over Kentucky a couple of years ago.
Yes, absolutely. So that's so let's talk about what that's like from a management style, management technique, et cetera. So who's your main client? The AD or the president of the university, or kind of both?
It's got to be both. I learned early on, the presidents are the bosses, and that's who the commissioner reports to. And you've got to make sure you're strategically aligned with them. And
are they, in essence, are they your board?
They are the board.
They are the board.
They have the fiduciary responsibility for the league.
Okay.
They fire the commissioner.
Yep.
And they really set the strategic direction.
Yep.
And the Horizon League has some incredibly strong presidents. Some of them are dealing with $billion budgets, running large R1 urban institutions. And I love our board because we've got that. And then we have two private institution presidents. So you've got the whole mix. But you got to make sure you're aligned with them. And the only way to do that is you go see them.
Yes.
You got to see them on their campuses.
Carry the bag, feet on the street.
Yes. Go have dinner and go to games. Just make sure you understand what are their pressures, because, we're living in this little athletics lane. They're dealing with this whole universe of challenges in higher ed. These jobs have truly gotten harder in the last few years, whether it's because of federal changes, state changes, like they're dealing with some real challenges. And as soon as you have an enrollment shortfall,
right,
that affects everything else, including athletics.
What's on their minds today? What are some of their big concerns outside of sports, right? Just from an education standpoint, enrollment, to your point, is it a struggle to still attract students? Like, are more students, is more of the population opting out of post-secondary education? They're trying to figure out how to recruit them. Like, what are some of the big things that they're thinking about and dealing with?
Yeah, enrollment is always first and foremost. Every year we've got a school whose enrollment's up and a couple schools whose enrollment's down. So that's always issue one. Issue two are just the changing federal, I would say, regulations around higher ed. International students, whether or not they're going to be cleared with their visas.
Yep.
That's a major challenge that our campuses are having. The federal assistance provided to students, that's a huge challenge. And then how does Title IX, not just in the athletic space, but apply across campus, as well as the DEI changes? We had a lot of DEI offices on 9 public campuses. Yep. Some are gone. And how do you navigate that and communicate that to a workforce of thousands?
Yep.
So and then you've got tenured faculty who are wondering, why are we spending millions on athletics? So part of my job is helping them. Like, we literally have PowerPoint decks making the case for Division I athletics, which talks about the return on investment that a major university gets from investing in athletics. But it really depends on the day, but their issues are consistent.
Are there any, I'm going to use this is way too generic, but are there any magic wands? Like, I actually just had a meeting this morning with a group that they built some software on trying to educate students going down to middle school and maybe even earlier. But this website, FAFSA. Oh, sure. Yeah. And so just how to, and you talk about like federal funding, and like when I went to college, I was able to leverage Pell Grants, right? And I had some student loans as well, and I worked a lot, but but there seems to be a big gap in awareness of how to access, whether it's federal programs and assistance and grants, or financial aid, scholarships. What you may not get super directly involved in that, right? Because you're the commissioner of the Horizon Sports League, but what do you hear out there? Like, what are some things that should happen to help, like, make that journey and discovery and self-education of how I go access this stuff when I'm a sophomore and start thinking about that? Well, because I have a sophomore in high school, we're starting that whole process. Yep. And one is and I know our Horizon League universities do this, because we have some universities whose mission is definitely like the regional public institution. We have one university that's open enrollment to ensure that anyone that wants to attend college in their region has a path to do so. And they go into the schools to try to explain this, open the doors, whether it's through the counselor or directly through those visits. But you still have to make sure you're getting in front of that student who otherwise might not know that this is an option. And so they've got strategies, obviously the digital marketing, media strategies, but I don't think you can replace literally having boots on the ground in the school systems, right? Yeah. I mean, that's how you get in front of people and explain, here's an opportunity and here's the pathway to do it. The other thing, I'm sorry, is a lot of our universities have bridge partnerships with community colleges so that the credits, like Green Bay just did this, and their enrollment really just saw a huge increase. It's an automatic transfer of credits if you have your associate's degree into the 4-year degree program, so that it's seamless. Right. And that's to me what we have to do more of. So making sure that there's alignment of those courses qualify for transfer. Or even just an acknowledgement of, because you earned your associates, we're going to check the box that you've created your core course requirements here, and now you can pursue your baccalaureate degree. That's interesting. I've heard some folks talk about mandating at the state level financial aid education. Have you heard about that at all, or what do you think about that? So, like, you're actually taking classes going back, maybe even earlier than sophomore year, like just starting to think about all the things you kind of got to check the boxes on to prepare if you want to go post-secondary. Because a lot of, the way I grew up on a farm, and we didn't, we were German Baptists, Thomas people with wills, and so all that stuff was foreign to me. I didn't even understand what the SAT was really for.
Right.
I knew I had to go take this test, I showed up on a Saturday without studying, and I just okay, I got a number 2 pencil. But I didn't know.
Right. I like that idea. I'm just thinking about athletics as a model. We've implemented and require now across Division I financial literacy. Now we're talking about college student athletes. Part of it's because we recognize there's NIL money coming to them, but part of it is also recognizing the overwhelming majority are not going to go pro in sport. So how do we position them to be successful?
Yeah.
Because many of them did not come to college, to your point, with any sort of financial literacy or someone holding their hand and just saying, here's what you need to do and here's how you do it. So there's a whole curriculum now required to deliver that athletics departments deliver to Division I student athletes, and you can do it digitally. There's in person, but the point is they need this because we know many of them are walking through the doors and don't have it. So I like the idea of trying to figure out, to your point, how does this happen in the secondary setting? Even
educating these athletes on how to withhold taxes.
Right.
That's part of it. Going to come due.
Right.
I'm assuming that's ordinary income, I guess, right?
Yes. Yep, they're contractors.
So you think about that, and there could be some real surprises if people are planning for that.
There's a lot of education happening on that. Now, is it being followed? I don't know. I hope so.
Yeah, gosh, that's scary, right? To be a 19-year-old kid and you spend 100% of your NIL money and you've got to...
And you got paid $1 million, which sounds like a lot of money, but you need to...
right.
Yes.
It goes away fast, right?
Right.
I digress for a second, but at 5 years old, I started laying out $1 bills. So my son could make $1 a day, and people, business, and family. And some of the stuff was objective, and some of the criteria were subjective on purpose. But lay out 7 $1 bills every 2 weeks, so 14 $1 bills, and got to pay the tax. Right, got to pay taxes.
Great.
And we talk about that, and then retirement, and then helping people who cannot help themselves. But I wanted him to see $14, and that looks like a lot of money. And then all of a sudden, and all you have left is this little...
It's a good reality check. I like that.
I don't know if it worked or not. We'll find out.
Okay, keep me posted on that. But I think you have a curriculum that maybe we could roll out.
Exactly. Too funny. So, all right. So we've navigated... from law school to the NCAA enforcement, going to the Horizon League, and now you're going to do another big stepping stone here in a couple of weeks. You're going to join the Pacers organization. And I love the Pacers. Great run last year.
Super excited.
Thought we were going to win that championship. So what inspired that?
So, I've been in college sports for a long time, since 1990. Well, I played, I guess, so we're going to go over 30 years if we count those days. So, I'm part of Indy's sports scene, and I had a chance to I've gotten to know first Rick Fuson through the Sports Corp board, and that gave me, I felt like the curtain got pulled a little bit back, and I got to see all the incredible work that the Pacers do in the community.
Yes.
Because they're very humble about that.
Yes.
And then seeing even their impact through the events that the Sports Corp was helping lead was really inspiring. So that just planted a seed in my mind of the good that pro sports does and can do.
Yep.
Then fast forward, the WNBA All-Star Game comes to Indy, obviously this past July, and Mel Raines, who I've gotten to know really well and been inspired by her leadership journey, approaches me and said, "Hey, would you serve on the board for the WNBA All-Star Game?" Well, of course. Big fan, season ticket holder for the Fever, whatever I can do to help make this the biggest and best WNBA All-Star Game, we're doing it. And Mel said, well, we raised $8 million to host the NBA All-Star Game, and we're not going to raise a penny less. And we're going to spend it so that we just blow the city up whenever the WNBA All-Star Game came. And that's exactly what happened. If you saw it, it was just a total takeover. All the athletes, of course, the Fever stars were everywhere. But all the other stars, Asia, Paige, you just saw them plastered on the buildings. It was awesome. So I got to have a leadership role, and in fact, we innovated a bit. I mean, I'm just using your words right here.
I love it.
But we did something because we said, okay, if we're going to be the capital of women's sports, which ties into this 2050 vision that Sports Corp launched a year ago, we need to bring the movers and shakers who are leading in this space of women's sports to Indy to see how extraordinary our city is when it comes to women's sports. So I talked with Mel because she created this women's engagement pillar. So we said we need to do something for girls in the region. We need to do something for women in their mid-career level. And then we need to do something for executives. So I took the executive track and said, we're going to go national on this recruitment effort and create like a really cool curated leadership experience. So we got bosses as in front office people, CEOs, of course, USA Gymnastics is here, but the CEO of US Open, CEOs of companies, CEOs of sports teams here. We got the owners, like the owner of the Chicago Sky came, and other people with an ownership stake in sports teams. We had storytellers, national media, and then spenders, CEOs and chief marketing officers who are already investing and seeing the power of women's sports. Created this, and we called it BOSS. So BOSS, super cool experience, took them to the track. They got to do hot laps, but then we had this, brought in some facilitators, and frankly, just allowed the magic to happen when you put people with that power and influence and passion in a room, and then let the network fly from there. So through that effort, and then I obviously got to know Mel and the Pacers Sports and Entertainment Group more. And then about a month ago, Mel approached me and said, she's now been in her role over a year and thinking about her executive team and had a position she thought that would really align with where my interest and passion. So
we're the amateur sports capital of the world.
Right.
Now we're going to become the women's sports capital of the world.
Right.
I love it. Is Marvella still in the works, do you know?
Oh, yes, very much so.
Let's talk about that for a second. I want to come back to Sports Corp here in a minute, too.
Yes. I mean, Allison Barber and Tamika are leading this Marvella effort, which every time I get an update, it's incredible. So I say, you think Grand Park, right, that we've all been to, that is this youth sports mecca almost. Well, they are going to elevate that and build a facility exclusively for girls in sports. And I think their target range is 8 to 18. It's going to be in the area of Fair Oaks Farm, so between Indy and Chicago, and make it a destination, not just where games are played, and they're going to have, all the team sports covered in terms of like world-class facilities, but they want to take it to the next level and care for the leadership side of the athlete, care for the mental health, the holistic side of the athlete, but then also look at training for parents on how do you support a female athlete. It's not just about wins and losses. It's obviously about development. And how do we even support them in being a part of this journey? So the renderings are really awesome, but I think the impact that they intend to have, and this is the first of 4, they want to then build other like I wouldn't even say satellite, just regional opportunities, but Marvella will be the flagship.
When I first talked to Allison about this, I was just blown away. It's going to have global impact. It's going to be massive.
I agree. And I think when you think about, because there's already a movement here as part of being the capital of women's sports, being the capital of women's sports research. I mean, we're not only going to launch this Fever performance facility that's over $80 million of an investment. Fever are going to train there, but think of all the data that will be able to be collected relative to the development life cycle of a female athlete, which is different than a male, and we don't have that research. Where Marvella is also recognizes the incredible opportunity they have to try to collect data that will be important to how do we make sure we don't have overuse injuries, and that we recognize how female bodies are different than male bodies when it comes to that. But then the mental side, I mean, I think we're just at the cusp, and to know that it's happening here in our state is awesome.
So speaking of that, let's go backwards in time again for a moment to 1979. So Indiana established the first sports commission in the country back in 1979. And this vision was cast to become this amateur sports capital of the world. And if I recall correctly, I think we built the Hoosier Dome without a team. And then the Baltimore Colts moved here. Maybe there were some back maybe there are some indications that somebody might be interested in moving, but who knows? But I think we kind of took a massive risk.
We believed.
We believed.
We believed.
And manifested that belief, right? And then you look what has transpired, and now you're the chair of the Sports Corp, right? And so let's talk about that for a minute. I just got chills. And so you have this massive initiative, right? And I think you had a 1 year earmarked, and you changed it to a different year. So let's talk about that a little bit,
right.
on challenging, how you think, how people think, et cetera. You're like, no, that doesn't make sense. Let's extend that to 2050, et cetera. And then what some of those initiatives that you're thinking about that like Marvella plays into, and all these are massive building blocks, all the work that the Pacers are doing, the Colts are doing, et cetera.
Well, yeah. To me, being involved in this 2050 vision has been a gift. So I joined Sports Corp board, and Rick Fuson was chair at the time, and he was just talking to all the board members about where are we, and we started talking about, at this point, Sports Corp was 40 years old, and I said to him, "What's our 2040 plan?" And now we need to start thinking about that, because all these cities are coming after us, right? They understand that there's a huge economic power in hosting these world-class sporting events. And so Rick said, well, that's going to be your job to help figure out, because I want you to be the next chair of the board. I said, okay, a challenge accepted. Patrick Talty is named the new president following the excellent work that Ryan Vaughn put in place.
Yep.
So Patrick and I were talking, and both new to our roles, and agreed that there were a few things we needed to really prioritize. One was ensuring that we were the best stewards we could be of the Indy Bid Fund, because Ryan, Patrick, Senator Kyle Walker, others really got that approved. And now we had state support to go after big events. So we got that in place with the help of Danny Lopez and others. Then we said we need to really put together an inspiring vision for this organization. And we were thinking 2040, and we thought that was really pushing us outside of our comfort zone, right? Then we hired Neil Batt to come on board from Next Practice Partners. And as Neil is really talking through this with us, he's like, you got to go 2050. And Patrick and I are both like, what do you mean? And he said, number one, you need to be bold. Number two, that's just a quarter of a century.
Right.
And you were the first sports commission. You aspire to be the best. I mean, we think we are, but we don't want to be too arrogant, right? Which is part of our Hoosier humility. We got to be maybe a little more boastful. But if you're going to lead and continue to lead in this space, you've got to go out to 2050. So, okay, we like that idea. Patrick and I, and this was a couple years ago early on, we set up a lunch meeting with Jim Morris, because Jim was a founder, one of the key founders of the Sports Corp and this larger sports strategy for our city and state. And I felt like I was going to like a lunch with the Godfather, but we needed his blessing to do this, because it was like, you did this, Jim. We are now trying to carry the flag forward. Do you agree we're in the right space? Because we said, we know we need to keep doing events, but we want to build this huge global ecosystem where these events thrive. But Indy's got to do more than just events, because we can't just compete with Vegas on events. We're going to have to build something that's even more extraordinary than that, which was, Jim always obviously used the word extraordinary. And Jim, he basically said, go forth 100%. I'm behind you guys. And then in true Jim fashion, and here's the 20 people you need to go talk to, which we did, just to make sure we were thinking about this in the right way. And then we became more public with the process. So that's where we then hatched the idea for not just events. We already have sports tech is really taken off with Sports Tech HQ. But that was the idea for, we're going to recruit more sports organizations like the NCAA to Indy, to call Indy home, because we know events will follow them.
Yes.
We're going to recruit, we want to be the center of sport education, where you go to study, research, learn sports law, sports management, sports leadership, whatever it is, sports medicine, sports performance. We need to build up that infrastructure and then get all of our educational institutions and industry to talk, and those steps are underway. And then the final piece, Neil actually approached me and he's like, Julie, I've got a fifth pillar for you. Because I was thinking it was the four. And this was like in a parking garage, after one of our Sports Corp board meetings. I said, what is it? He's like, we need to be the capital of women's sports.
I love it.
And I thought about it and I said, you know what? You're right. Because that puts us truly on the map. So it was an iterative process. Definitely got a little uncomfortable because we were pushing ourselves outside of our comfort zone. But the other thing I really learned is, so we put it out there last September of 24, and then people are now running with it. So yes, Sports Corp, planted it, and we've said like this is the North Star, but we're not owning all of the pillars. We want to continue to facilitate and strategize and lead. But we also recognize like the capital of women's sports, the notion of hosting WNBA All-Star. Mel Raines approached me at a Big Ten game and said, hey, if we're going to be the capital of women's sports, we probably need to host the WNBA All-Star game sooner rather than later. I said, yes. She said, okay, well, I'm working on it.
Here we go.
And then here we go. So, I think it's a way for people to really rally around.
And here in a few months, we're going to have the first time ever, the Final Four in D2, D3. And am I missing something?
The NIT.
The NIT.
The Horizon League Championship will be back. Got to put a plug in. But yes. To have all 3 NCAA championships and the NIT championship in the same first ever.
Same city, same week.
Same weekend, yes.
Right?
I mean, if you want to see college basketball champions crowned, this is the only place to come.
It's going to be insane.
Right.
Hopefully this podcast studio will just be on fire, right? Just around the clock.
It's going to be amazing.
It's going to be insane. So we're approaching our rapid fire questions here in a moment. Before we go there, so you have a fascinating career, and you've rubbed elbows with some of the smartest people in the world, right? You are one of the smartest people in the world.
I'm not.
So that's what smart people always say. So, what are some of as you're trying to like herd cats, right? What are some of the lessons learned, like how you win people over? Because you're working with people at the top of their game, right, all over the place. What are some of the things that you've learned and how to gain buy-in from them for some of these big initiatives?
I think, and I'll talk about the Horizon League and then some indie experiences. I walk into my first head men's basketball coaches meeting, and they all knew that I was at the NCAA as like the lead. I was running enforcement, so they knew of me, but they didn't know me, and they really questioned. Yeah, I knew basketball, but could I lead basketball for our league? Because that was really, I was supposed to lead their championship, their scheduling, their officiating. And they're looking at me like, what does she know about this? And I could feel...
You're like, I'm all American.
I could feel that doesn't matter to them. So walk in the room and you can feel a couple side eyes. I had already been able to connect with one of the coaches in the room who's still in the room, which says a lot. And that was Greg Campy, the head coach at Oakland, who I had already heard is a good guy, a tough guy. But once he will be open-minded to try to get to know you. So I made an effort to get to know him and to let him know, hey, I love basketball. I believe in what the Horizon League stands for. It aligns with my values and I'm here to help. I know I got a lot to learn, but I will get after it.
Yeah. So
I knew that establishing that relationship was key, and thankfully he was receptive to me. And once I had I wouldn't say a champion, but acceptance by him, then other coaches softened a little. And there was still one coach at the time. He was a bit of a sour guy, and I needed his support I was trying to create a basketball excellence fund, over the line. He was head coach at Youngstown State. They were playing at Purdue, right? So they were going to be the only red in a sea of black. And so I went to the game because as league, you can obviously go to the games and sit behind the bench. And I took my then 2-year-old because that's how David and I were juggling that day. And it was a weekend. So Harper and I go to the game. I'm sitting behind the bench. He sees me and I get the nod. And I thought, okay, he finally sees that I'm not just here for the show.
Awesome.
Like I care, right?
Right.
So it's always about the people. Like you got to show up, you got to let them know you're there with them in it.
Yep.
And then really listen, like what are their challenges and issues? And at the league level, I always try to figure out where are their commonalities here? Because that's the stuff that I think we can take on at the league level and try to move forward from an initiative standpoint. But to me, it's always the people.
I love that. And it's hard work. It takes time, right? Doing
Yes, you got to show up. And then, I mean, it's like you tell your kids, you got to follow up.
I love it. All right. Well, here we are. We have arrived at the rapid fires.
All right.
So the first one is, what is one thing in your industry that you think people should stop doing?
Okay. Is this a college sports industry?
Whichever industry.
Okay, we're going to go there.
Yeah.
Because this part is driving me nuts lately. These buyouts. And I understand there's markets and contracts, so I would love to see some federal regulation to stop it, because signing these contracts and then paying coaches and now even athletics directors crazy amount of money to walk away when that money could be better spent supporting the college athletics programs.
Right.
That's got to stop.
Fascinating. What is one thing, process, or habit that you think leads to the best ability to disrupt yourself, to think differently?
I think it is, like, for me personally, it's getting up early, but I think it's creating time when you are not distracted to like earnestly think.
I love that. If you could solve one problem in the world with innovation, what would it be?
Food insecurity.
I love it. Anything else we haven't covered today, Julie, that you want people to know?
Thank you. I think what you're doing here is fantastic with Elevate. Appreciate your innovation, because you're leading the way. We appreciate you.
Thank you so much. How can people get in touch with you if they want to reach out?
I am on LinkedIn, and my profile will be changing from Horizon League to Pacer Sports and Entertainment here as I embark on this next chapter. But I'm very accessible. All
right. Well, Julie Roe Lach, congratulations on an amazing career, and you're getting started. Literally, we got 50 more. We got 50 more years.
I hope so. Okay.
We're not messing around. All right. Until next time on Innovate or Evaporate, we'll see you soon.